Okay, so I have started the recording. So, how was your weekend?
Weekend was good. Good. Busy but good.
Okay, okay.
What about you?
Did you, yeah, yeah, it was good. It was good. So, did you get a chance to go through whatever we went through on the last session?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have any query?
I had only a little bit of doubt about the defect clustering and the absence of errors fallacy.
Okay, okay, okay. I
Little
will just
doubt.
go
Little
through.
doubt, but I tried to read it and understand.
Okay, okay. Just give me 5 minutes. I'll just come back and let's discuss on that. Okay, is that fine?
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Suzanne, so I'm back. So, yeah, the first one was you mentioned about
The
defect clustering.
defect clustering
Okay, and the second one?
was this absence of errors fallacy. I understand that defect clustering is there could be a number of modules and the defects are interrelated or something like that.
Yeah, so defect clustering is basically suppose you have a whole application, right? And
Uh-huh.
in that application, there could be several modules. Like the example that we are discussing about last day was the Amazon.com. Now, in the Amazon.com, there are hundreds of modules, but not all the modules are complicated likewise, right? So if we take the module like search module, or if we take the module like cart module or payment module, those are more complicated than the other modules. We are just
Mhm.
taking an example. So defect clustering is, I mean, if there are any complicated modules in the whole application, so the tendency of the defects would be the defects should be coming more from those complicated modules. So
Mhm.
we need to check the clustering of the defects. I mean, which are those modules from where we are getting maximum number of defects. So if we are getting total 100 number of defects from an application, we need to
Mhm.
check that what are those modules from where we are getting suppose 80% or 90% of the defects. And
Mhm.
if we clustered those defects, we will see that the 2 or 3 modules which are more complicated in nature, most of the defects are coming from those modules. So that is
Okay.
defect clustering. Okay, so
Mhm.
if we test those 2 or 3 modules which are more complicated, and from which modules the defect more defects are coming, so if we test, so those are the critical modules, and if we test those modules, or if we focus our testing on those modules, then we can say that we have the most number of coverage for our whole testing.
Mhm.
So that was the defect clustering. And
Okay.
the last one that you told is
Absence of errors
fallacy
fallacy.
of errors.
Mhm.
Yeah, so fallacy of errors, as I mentioned, so what did you understand from it?
That it could any application could be bug free to a certain percentage,
Hmm.
but it's not completely bug free.
Yes, absolutely. So the thing was that it might happen that it's looking like before the release, we don't have any bug present in that application, right? So
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
have tested everything and you are not getting any bugs from anywhere. It might look like there is no bug present in the application, but it might happen that the requirement that you have received, there is a bug itself in the requirement. Okay, and that bug was not caught during the requirement review, or even when the requirement analysis was done by the testing team or by the development team, the bug was not caught there, the requirement defect
Mhm.
was not caught there. So
Mhm.
although it's looking like there is no bug present in that application and you have tested thoroughly, you don't see any more bugs, there is no open bug for the developers to fix it, but still there might be some bugs, right? Due to some
Mhm.
various reasons. Also it could happen that you might have missed something to test. It's a very minor thing, but while writing the test cases, while writing the test scenarios, you have missed that requirement. It could also happen. I mean, humans are prone to mistakes. So the requirement was there. The requirement was provided by the customer, and it might also happen that in the initial draft of the requirement they didn't provide that particular requirement, but at
Mhm.
the very end the customer provided that requirement which was not documented properly, and that's why
Mhm.
you didn't, both the testing and the development team missed that requirement, but still
Mhm.
the requirement was there from the users or the customer, right?
Oh,
And due to that, you had not written any test cases for that, and the developers also missed to add that feature in the application. And what happened is, now when you everything is looking fine, still you are missing some feature in the application which is an obvious bug, right?
okay.
So
Yeah.
this is the policy of defect. I mean, however everything is looking fine and no new bugs or no existing bug is visible in the application, still there could be a chance that due to some human error, due to some mistake, or due to some defect in the requirement itself, there is some hidden bug in the application.
Mhm.
So that is the policy.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more query? Do you have anything else?
No, no, no. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we can start with today's session, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. I hope my screen is visible to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So welcome to the session 2 of our manual testing course, and just we'll take a look that on whatever we are going to cover today. So the first thing is we are going to talk on why do software have bugs? Why do the software have bugs? Then we will talk about how much testing is enough, because we see that we saw in the last class that exhaustive testing is not possible, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So what was the reason of that? Why exhaustive testing was not possible?
Because it is a waste of time, and you cannot have testing without boundaries. So that means you have to test every component. No, you just pick up the important modules or sections and test that. Otherwise, it will be timeless and waste of money.
Yes. So exhaustive testing means testing everything and anything. But while we talk, while we be practical, so we always have a deadline to deliver, right?
Mhm.
And exhaustive testing is something that tells about, it's infinite.
Mhm.
There won't be, it's not possible that you can test anything and everything for an application. You
Right.
need to leave something behind, which has to go untested. So that's why you need to prioritize your testing. You need to see what are the critical features, what are the critical modules, and that's why the defect clustering also comes into the picture, that you need to
Mhm.
see that what are the critical modules and from where you might get maximum number of bugs, and then you need to strategize your testing accordingly. So that's why exhaustive testing is not possible, and that's why we need to also create that boundary that when we should stop our testing. So how
Mhm.
much testing is enough, that will go through today. Then we'll talk about the priority and severity for the defects. Then we'll see the differences between validation and verification, and we'll talk about software development lifecycle and software test lifecycle as well. We were talking about these two terms on the last class, if you remember: software development lifecycle, software test lifecycle. We'll try to go through upon this in this lecture. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so before we move to this point, that why do software have bugs, let's talk about what is bug and what are the different type of bug. So that is not given in this particular slide, but I want you to be clear about that. And so you can also make a note about it. There are three things. Okay, the first one is error. Okay, the next one is bug or defect, and the third one is failure. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
depending on the level, on which level we are getting those defects or bugs or failures or errors, whatever you say it, these terms are used. So when do we call a, a defect as an error? So it's in the development phase, right? So in the development phase, when the developers are writing their code and developing the application, developing the software, at that time, if there are any mistake done by the developer, in it might be in the programming, it might be something else. So if the mistake has been done by development team and that has been caught in that phase only, then we call it as an error. Okay, so if the
Mm-hmm.
developers are making some mistake and that has been caught in the development phase itself, because we were talking about different levels of testing as well, right? In the last class, if you
Mm-hmm.
remember, we talked about unit testing. The developers will be doing the testing from their end as well. So that is called unit testing. We'll see these in the upcoming lectures. So, but it's better that we discuss some of it in now only, so that in the next sessions, whenever we are talking about this, it can correlate to them. So developers will be doing some of their testing from their end as well, and that is called the unit testing. So that is done in the development phase. After that, it comes to whenever the build is ready for testing. This is sent to the testers for for testing by the testers. So at that time, the testing is done. There are different levels there as well, like system testing, system integration testing. Then we have acceptance testing, and then it is sent to the customers for their testing. Okay, so there are different levels of testing, and these errors or these bugs can be found in different levels. So now, if the bugs are or the errors or the deviations between the actual and expected result is happening, or we are catching those during the development phase itself, so that is called an error. Now when the build is given to the testers and the testers are testing it, at that time if we get those deviations, so then we call it as defect or a bug, right? Is it clear?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, and then when the application is tested by the testers and it is deployed to production and the customers are using it, okay, at that time if we find that no, this is not happening as we expected it to be, or there are some deviation between the actual result and the expected result, and this is failing, basically this is failing, because it's already you are using amazon.com, and now if you are not able to search for a product, so that means that the application is failing, right? That's a failure.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, now if the application is in production and the users, the customers are already using it, and at that time if there is a deviation in between the expected result and the actual result, then we call it as a failure. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that is the difference between the error, the defect or bug, and the failure. So from next time onwards, whenever you see that this is an error, you should remind that okay, if this is an error, if this term is being used, so there might be a probability that this is being happening during the development phase. If you talk about the bugs or defects, so that means it has been caught during the testing phase. And if we talk about failure, so that means that application has been tested and it's in deployment, it's in the production stage, and the error is happening there in the production stage. So that's why it's called as failure. This is a very common interview question, and they might ask you what's the difference between a defect, or what's the difference between a defect and a failure, or what's the difference between the error, defect and failure. So you need to answer accordingly. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's talk about why do software have bugs, right? So
Yeah.
when we talk about bugs, so it is already discussed. We have already discussed that what is bug, or what is error, what is failure. Anything that is deviating from our expected result, we call it as a bug, or it's an error, or it's a failure. So what is the reason why do software have bugs? So the software might have bugs because of the miscommunication or no communication. What is miscommunication or no communication? We have already discussed about it. So if you can tell me how this miscommunication or no communication can lead to the software having bugs. This
Because
we will try to keep it as a discussion, so that you can also get involved, and that will help you to get your basics clear. So let's keep it in this way.
so if the tester finds that there is a defect or a bug and it is not communicated to the development team or to the responsible people,
Hmm.
then it's going to lead to a failure or cost, increases when it is discovered at a later stage. So it's not communicated properly, I understand. Or, you know, we just do our job and don't let the team know, then it's going to lead to further errors at a later stage.
Okay, so the thing that we are looking at currently is what happens if the bug is there and it's not communicated properly. What we are talking about right now is what is the reason of this bug coming to the software, right? What you told, that is what will happen if the bug is not communicated to other team members or other developers, right? But what we are
Mhm.
trying to focus right now is, why do software have bug? Why did that bug come to the software? What is the source of it, right?
Uh, because
Yeah.
we make mistakes, humans make
Yes.
mistakes, and mistakes need to be caught.
Absolutely, absolutely. So why did that mistake happen? So one reason could be miscommunication or no communication. Now, where did this miscommunication or no communication happen? This might happen in different level. Okay, the first level, in the requirement what was provided by the customer, so that there was miscommunication, or there was lack of communication in that. Maybe the requirement was not described properly. Maybe they had something in their mind and they have documented something in their mind. Maybe it might happen that there are some BA from your company who are sitting there in the customer side. They're trying to understand the requirement from the client, and they're documenting it. Now, it happens a lot of time that the client is not clear with their requirement itself. Okay, they don't know what they are actually trying to build. They have different team members, and they are having confusion in between themselves, that what we actually need to do, what the thing actually would look like. And at that time, there is a chance of miscommunication between the BA or the business analyst and the customer who are sitting there. And that's why business analyst team is not able to document those requirements properly. And that's why properly documented requirements didn't come to the development team, right? So if
Mhm.
that is happening, then whatever the development team will be developing, there will be differences in between the expectation and what they're developing, right? So that
Mhm.
could lead to the bugs to be present in that application.
Mhm.
So that is one level where the miscommunication might happen. The next level is, suppose the developers, okay, so when we talk about a very complex application, as we were talking through the taking the example of Amazon.com, so we are seeing that there could be different modules, right, in a particular application, and it might also happen that all those modules are being developed by different teams as well, right? There could be two or three different companies who are collaborating among themselves, and they are developing the whole application. So in those cases, if there is miscommunication between, and right, those modules talk to each other, they are integrated among themselves, and that's why the data flows between those modules as well. As we are taking the example of Amazon.com, we are seeing like whenever you search a product, then you go to the product details page, you add those to the cart, and then you go to the cart, you make the required changes, and then you go to the payment, and then you get the order confirmation page. So these are the different modules where the data flows in between them. And whenever if those modules are being developed by different teams are engaged in the development, so there could be a possibility that this miscommunication is happening in between those teams, right? It could
Mhm.
be a reason as well. And due to the miscommunication happening between those different due to the miscommunication happening between those different teams, there could be that could be the source of the bug to be present in that software, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is software complexity. So as like we are talking that if a particular module or if a particular software is very much complex, so that could be the reason of the errors being made by the developers as well, which could result to the software having the bugs present in the application. Now the next is the changing requirements. So this is a very big reason of the softwares having the bugs. So there could be it might happen that the user or the customer is not sure about their requirement, how the software should look like, what should be the UI, what should be the business cases for that application. And that's why they had provided, because they also do have the deadline to provide the requirement. So initially they provided a requirement, but after reviewing the requirement, they found that okay, no, this is not actually something that we are looking to or looking forward. Rather, we need these things in our requirement. Now whenever you're getting a requirement, the development team or the testing team is getting an initial draft of requirement from the customer, you start developing your test cases, or you start doing your test planning. And at the same time, after the initial analysis, the developers will start their designing and developing as well, right? Now when you have already started your test planning, or strategizing your test cases, and at the same time the developers are also started their designing and developing, and in the meantime, if the client is coming up with the changes that okay, we asked for this, but now we need this, right?
Mm.
So at that time it would be difficult for everyone, for the development team, for the testing team to you need to rewrite your test cases. The developers has to again go and change their design, change their coding. So at that time, while changing these things, this might be the reason of the software having the bugs. So this happens a lot of time when the customers come up with the changed requirements, and that's why it happens for the I mean for the testers and the developers both. They need to again go back and change whatever they did. And while making those changes, you wrote your test cases keeping the initial requirement in your mind, and when the requirements have changed, It might happen that you are not changing those test cases. Some other tester, you have taken a sick leave, and the other tester is now changing those test cases, and he or she is not sure whatever you had written, what you had in your mind while writing those test cases. And when he or she is writing those test cases, or from the development side, when other developer is developing or changing the code, so he is not sure what the actual author had in mind while writing those code, while writing those test cases. And while making those changes, he or she might do some mistakes, which might occur, or which might be the reason for the software having bugs. Now the fourth one is poorly documented code. How this could be a reason of the software having bugs. Okay, so when suppose we have a release, and for that release we have received a requirement. The requirement is fine. The requirement is fine that we have got from the users, or the customer, and the development team has worked on that, and they have developed a fine software which is working as expected, and you have tested it nicely. You as a tester have tested it nicely, and now you don't have any bug in the software, and the release was very fine. The customer was happy with that as well. Now they have came up with a new list of requirement, a new list of features that has to be added on the top of what it has been developed. Okay,
Mhm.
now there is a case where the developers had developed those code, but they have not documented anything. They have not documented the code. Okay, so when you'll start to see the code, if we go to the coding phase, you'll see that whenever we do any kind of coding, we need to document it. Okay, we need to document it so that whenever it's being viewed by some other developer, they are able to see whatever was done by the team, by the previous team.
Mhm.
Now if the document is not done clearly, and some other team is actually working on that, so they won't be able to see. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, sorry for that. So now if the code is not properly documented, so and some other team has the ownership now. Okay, suppose uh, company A was responsible for the initial development. They had developed it nicely, and it's in the production right now, but somehow the contract between the customer and the company A has ended. Okay, and now the customer has gone to company B, and they have given the ownership to do the required changes. Okay, so now in this time when the company B will open the code, and they are getting that nothing is documented properly. So now if they will try to understand the code by going through the code itself, there could be possibility that they won't be able to understand everything.
Mhm.
Okay, and now when they'll try to write the code on the top of the existing code, there could be the possibility of doing mistake. And that's why it's absolutely necessary to document everything in a very nice way, so that whenever you document everything, whenever the ownership changes, the other team would be able to understand it nicely, and they will be able to start working from there.
Mhm.
Not only if that's whatever we talked about, that's the ownership change is changing from one team to another team. Now if we talk about a single team as well, it might happen that the team members are changing there. Okay, there were some 3 4 developers who were working on that, and two of the developers have changed their job. They are not in the same team, and some other developers have joined the team who will be working now. So at that time as well, they need to go through the code, and if those are not documented, they will be doing some mistake. So that's why it's always suggested, or it's a thumb rule in our industry, that whatever you are doing, do document them properly, so that whenever some new people are joining in your team, they should be able to go through those documents and they should be able to understand them correctly, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Now the last one is the software development tools. So there are different software development tools that are present, like those are being used by different teams as well, like the development team or the testing team or the business analyst team. So they are using different tools. Okay. Now the development tools are using different the development team is using different tools for their development purpose. The testing team, as like, we will also look at a lot of tools while in our next course, next sessions, where we need to use those tools for our testing as well. Okay. So
Mhm.
now when we use these tools, and when we have to migrate from one tool to another tool, it might lead us to some I mean losses. Okay. So losses in terms of, suppose we are using a particular tool for our development or testing, and now we have the agreement or the license has ended, and that's why you need to migrate to some other tool. Say we are using a tool A for which the support is ended, I mean the company has ended their support for that particular tool, and now you need to shift to some other tool, you need to migrate to some other tool. And now when you are migrating to some other tool, it's happening that whenever you are migrating your code to that tool, or whenever you are migrating your test to that tool, it could happen that something is lost in between the migration. Okay. And now whenever it's migrated and you are trying to test with the new tool, you might see that something is missing from the application, which has resulted to the bugs being present in the application. So these are the different reasons why the software might have bugs, and there could be some other reasons as well, which we'll see through in our next sessions. So I'll take a pause here, and I'll ask you if you have any question whatever we have discussed, so I
No,
can answer those.
no, no, it's pretty.
Okay, so I think everything is fine and we can move to the
Yes,
next section,
yes.
right?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So now we are going to see that how much testing is enough for us. So this is a very very abstract topic to talk about, right? So how much testing is enough? So nothing is enough. Nothing is enough. And the more you will test, the more you will see that there would be something, or some or else bug will be there. So this is very much required to we need to have that baseline where we need to stop, where we do need to stop, and we need to go for the release, because we don't have infinite time to us to continue our testing. And so that's why it is very very much required that we, in the beginning phase, in the initial phase of the whole development, when we are doing our test planning, when we are doing our analysis, we need to come up with the exit criteria. This term you need to remember is the exit criteria. The exit criteria is where our testing, we can stop our testing, and we can raise the flag that okay, now we can go ahead for the release, right? So the answer of the query, of the question how much testing is enough, is it depends. It depends on different phases, like how much complex the application is. If the application under test is very complex in nature, in that case, you need to say that we need to do a thorough testing. We need to, test those critical scenarios very well. And that's why we need a thorough testing of those features or those modules.
But
Now,
who
suppose,
decides on that?
yeah, sorry.
But who decides on how much testing is enough?
So it is decided by the testing team, the test architect, and the business analyst. Okay,
Okay.
so whenever initially uh, the planning will be done, right, for the testing, uh, when the requirement is analyzed. So after that, will come to that, we'll come to the software test life cycle today, in the next section. And when we'll look at the software testing life cycle, there are different phases. Okay, if I just go ahead and so this is the software test life cycle. And you can see that after the requirement analysis, there is a test planning phase, right?
Okay.
So in the test planning phase, I'll come to it later today. So whenever we are in the test planning phase, so that time we decide or we strategize our testing, whatever we are going to test for this release. And at
Mhm.
that time only we document our test plan. And in the test plan document, we write our exit criteria as well, that when should we stop our testing. Now
Mhm.
there is another thing as well, like at the beginning you have decided like, okay, this is the time when we'll stop our testing. But it could also change while we are actually in our testing phase. Why?
Mhm.
So that is written here, right? That if lot of faults are found with a set of planned tests, it is likely that more tests will be required to assure that the required level of software quality is achieved. So we need to keep our quality in our mind as well, right? So
Mhm.
now suppose you have while the planning, it was decided that, okay, if we do this 100 set of testing, so that would be enough. I guess that would be enough for our testing, and that would cover almost every aspect or every feature of our application. Now when you have started your testing, you are seeing that there are a lot of bugs present on a particular module or on a particular feature. Now when you are getting so many bugs present in a particular feature, so you need to test that thoroughly, right? So you
Mhm.
suppose in the planning phase you decided that, okay, we'll do this 20 test cases. This 20 test cases should be enough, or this modules for this 2 or 3 modules, this 50 test cases would be enough for the coverage, for the test coverage. Now while you are testing those modules, you see that there is bug everywhere. Okay, whatever you are testing, you are getting a bug from there. And so you'll see that you need to do more testing for those modules. So at that time, this exit criteria would be changing, right? Because you are getting so many bugs and failures from those modules. So that's why you need to do more round of testing on those modules, and which will increase the scope of testing, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it depends, like if you are not getting so many bugs while you are testing, so at that time you can say that, okay, the software is not having much bugs, and we the 2 or 3 rounds of testing is not required. You have, so suppose normally what we do have in the testing is basically there are different environments on which we test as well. So there would be a development environment where the developers will develop their code, right? After that they will give you a test environment where the build will be deployed, and on that environment you will be testing your application. right? After the test stage or the test environment, the application will be deployed into a pre-production environment, which is also known as stage environment. Okay, so these are the different levels of testing or different rounds of testing. Initially you will be testing on the test environment. After that, the same code will be deployed in a pre-production environment or the stage environment. After that, it will be going to the another environment where the users or the customers will be testing the code. So there are different levels, or there are different modules of testing as well. Now, uh, while you are testing it and you are getting a lot of bugs, so you need to make sure that when the bugs are resolved, you need to do around another round of testing, right? So at that time your scope is increasing, the scope of testing is increasing. Now if you're not getting a lot of bugs, you are getting just 2 3 bugs, and once those bugs are fixed, a round of retesting is enough, right? But if you're getting more and more bugs, your rounds of testing will be increased, so the scope of testing will get increased as well. So basically it's a runtime. It depends, like you need to plan something before you start your testing, but during the testing as well you need to uh, take a step back, do a retrospection, that okay, how much bugs we are getting, how the software is behaving, and according to that you need to decide that when we can actually stop our testing, or you can say that okay, now the testing is enough and we can go for the release. There could be also a situation where at the end of the testing, at the end of the release, you are getting some of the bugs. Okay, and when you are getting those bugs, you need to check that how much these bugs are affecting your system. Okay, there could be, as we are talking in our last section, right, there could be some major bugs, there could be some minor bugs. If there are some minor bugs, then we can decide that okay, I mean, these are not the bugs which will affect the business. Okay, there are some bugs, there are some UI bugs which are there in the application, but that won't affect the business, right? Just an example, right? This is the logo of Janbus training, right? Now suppose this logo is supposed to be coming here in the screen, but this is not coming here, this is coming, say, here in the screen. So will that affect the business?
No.
This won't affect the business, but still this is a bug, right? There is
Yeah.
a difference between the expected result and the actual result. So this is a
Yeah.
minor bug. In some cases this could be a major bug as well. We'll talk about that in the later, but this is still a bug. Now if you are getting this bug at the end of the release, so the management can decide that okay, this is not something that we need to fix right now. Okay, we can release the product with this bug, and in the next release we'll be solving this issue. Okay, so that is also a parameter, that what kind of bug you are getting at the end of the release, and how are you dealing with that, whether the management is deciding to go ahead with the release with the bug or not. So if the management is deciding that okay, this bug is there but this is minor in nature and we can go ahead with the release with this bug, so in that case you can stop your testing there, right?
Yeah.
But if this is something that the developer has to fix it, so developers will fix it. Once that bug is fixed, it will come to your plate again. You need to again retest that functionality to make sure that the bug is fixed, and then it will deploy to production. So that means depending on the complexity, depending on the criticality, depending on the visibility, depending on the reliability, depending on the quality of the product, the depending on different parameters, we decide that how much testing is enough or where we can stop our testing,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So is it clear? Do you have any query? Do you have
No,
any
no,
doubt?
no. It's good.
No, right? Okay, we can go ahead. Okay, so now we are going to talk about two very important aspect, and this is a very important question for interview as well. I mean, I have taken a lot of interviews, I have attended a lot of interviews, and almost 99.9% of interviews, they will ask this question: what is priority, what is severity, and what is the difference between them? And whenever you'll be logging your bugs, normally we use a particular tool to, whenever you'll be getting your bugs, you'll be logging those so that the developers will take a look at that, and then they can see the details of the bug, and then they can fix that. So whenever you'll be logging a bug, you need to mention the priority and the severity of the bug there. So this is a very important aspect, and you need to understand it very well. This is very important from the interview point of view as well. So this will be asked in the interview, and you need to be very clear with this, because I have seen that whenever the interview is not able to make the interviewer understand about the concept of priority and severity, the interviewer will have an assumption that you don't have the basics clear, you don't have the basics of the testing clear. So that's why you are not able to express what is priority and what is severity. So that's why it's very much important, it's a very much important concept to be understood, right? Okay,
Mhm.
so this whatever we are talking in the last slide, so it is related to that only. Okay, so what is priority and what is severity? Let's talk about severity first. So whenever you are finding any bug, right, so you need to decide that how that bug is affecting your system. That means how severe that bug is. If the bug is present in the application, how it could impact the business, right? How it could impact the or damage the business, or how it can harm the reputation of the company. So when we talk about uh, a software, a software has many aspects, right? In the education sector or in the financial sector, normally a software deals with the finance. In the banking or in the insurance domain, if the software is having a major bug, it could lead to the financial loss for the customers. Now if we talk about the healthcare, and if the software is having bug, it could lead to the loss of life as well, right?
Mhm.
So that's why whenever you are seeing a bug, you need to find, or you need to decide how that bug is going to affect the software, right? So now let's take the example of the this logo, this Janbas training logo.
Mhm.
So if the logo is expected to be present here, and if the logo is not present here, the logo is present here, what do you think, what could be the severity of that bug?
It could be severe because it may affect the business, but it is not a high priority. It could be a low priority.
We are not talking about the priority right now, right? Because I have not described what is a priority of the bug. So you might know the priority. What is a priority? You don't know that. So let's focus on the severity itself. Okay. So what is severity? Severity is basically how severe that bug is, or how much that bug is affecting the functionality of the system, of the application. Now, if this is a logo and this logo is not present here, the logo is present here, or suppose the logo is present here, but there is a spelling mistake. Okay, this is Janbask, but suppose the it's the A is not here, it's E, so it makes it Janbask,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yes.
also a bug. This
Yes.
is also a bug.
Yes.
Now, how much this bug is affecting the functionality of the application?
It it is severe because people could be misled.
Yes, correct. People could be misled. That's correct. But is it going to harm the functionality of the application?
Not the functionality, probably resulting in financial loss.
Yes. So if it's not impacting the functionality, if it's not impacting the environment, if it's not impacting the behavior of the application, then it's not a high severity bug. It's a low
Mhm.
severity bug. Okay.
Okay. Mhm.
So I'll give you another example, right? So suppose we have an application. Let's talk about the Amazon.com itself. Okay. Now, when we scroll down to the footer part of the application, we see there are different links present there, right? Like contact
Mhm.
us, help, about. So these are the different links that are present there. Now, how many times does it happen that you click on the about section of Amazon.com?
Not many.
No.
No.
So now let's take an example that when you are actually clicking on that about section, you are getting a error message there. Okay. So
Mhm.
maybe the page is broken and that's why you are getting an error message. But look at the business case. How many actual users are going to click on that uh, about link? Very few.
Right. Yeah.
It could be just 0.1%.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, right, what is the severity of the bug?
It's not high priority.
Let's not talk about the priority right now. We are not talking
Mhm.
about the priority. We're just focusing on the
I mean, not
severity.
priority, severity. It's not
Yeah,
very.
severity and priority are two different things. So we need to be
Yeah.
very clear with the concept. Severity is how much that bug is affecting the system.
Mhm.
Okay, affecting the functionality of the system. Now, in this case, it's a high severity because this is affecting the functionality of the application. Whether it's a now, if you're like clicking on the login button and if you're not able to log in, so that is the loss of functionality,
Mhm.
right? So that is
Yeah.
the loss of functionality, so that is creating uh, the functional loss, and that could lead to business loss as well. So whenever any bug is affecting the functionality of the system, it's a high severity bug. But
Mhm.
if there are any bug present in the application which is not affecting the system, the functionality of the system, it's a low severity bug.
Mhm.
Okay. Now just uh, move our focus to priority. What is priority? Now, priority of a bug is, we'll come back to severity again, but let's understand what is priority. So, priority is basically whenever you are finding a bug, how soon the developer should fix that bug. That is denoted by priority. Okay. So, if you are finding a bug and the developer has to fix that bug right away, right now. So that is a high priority bug. If
Mhm.
the developer can delay the fixation of that bug, that is a low priority bug. Now this
Mhm.
severity, the concept of this severity and priority are interlinked. Okay, so let's take an example of a high priority and low severity bug. Okay, so what is a high priority low severity bug? So this is also a very important interview question. Like they will ask you to give you an example of a high priority low severity bug. They will give you they will ask you to give an example of high severity low priority bug. Okay, so let's talk about this. So what is a high priority low severity bug? So high priority means the developer has to fix that right away, right?
Mhm.
The developer has to fix that bug as soon as possible. Low severity means although the developer has to fix that bug as soon as possible, it's not affecting, the bug is not affecting the functionality of the system on a very high level, right?
Mhm.
So in this case, we can take the example of this logo, right? If there is a spelling mistake in this logo, so that is a low severity bug.
Yeah.
It's not affecting the functionality of the application, but it's a high priority bug for the developer, because if your logo is not correct, that might, you know, cause the brand value.
Mhm.
You know, people will be joining this course and they will see some other name in the logo, and when they will search with that name in the Google, they won't find anything, or they will find your competitor, because
Mhm.
you know, names are very similar nowadays.
Yeah.
So now if you have Jan Besk and some other company come comes with the same name, and they will find your competitor in that case,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
in this case, this is a high priority bug because it's affecting the brand value of your company.
Mhm.
So that this is an example of a high priority but low severity bug, right? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we are talking about low priority, low severity bug, what could be that? What could be an example of a low priority and low severity bug?
Maybe this logo with Jandas training, uh, learn and grow is not there. That wording is not there.
Yes. So suppose this wording is not there, or suppose this small line, this is missing
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is not affecting your brand value because
Right.
the company name is present there, and this is no way this is affecting the, you know, the functionality of the application, right?
Right.
So
Mhm.
in this case, it's a low priority, low severity bug. Very good. I
Right.
mean, you are getting the concepts clear. Now let's come here again. High severity and high priority bug. So this is very easy. Like you are trying to log into Amazon.com, right? And you are not able to
Mhm.
log in. So
Mhm.
now, as you are not able to log into the application, you are not able to place any order, you are not able to do anything,
Mhm.
and it will indeed affect the business of Amazon.com, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yes.
it's a high priority bug for the developer as well. They need to fix that bug as soon as possible, because
Right.
otherwise it will impact the business of the company.
Mhm.
And it's a high severity bug because obviously it's affecting the functionality of the
Function.
business.
Yeah.
So this is an example of high severity and high priority bug. Another example, suppose you are able to log in, but you are not able to add the item to the cart, right?
Mhm.
So if you're not able to add the item to the cart, you are not able to purchase the item. and that is affecting the business, that is affecting the functionality of the application.
Mhm.
So that is also an example of high priority and high severity bug. Now let's come to the last thing, which is high severity low priority bug. So can you give me an example of a high severity low priority bug?
Like if you're logging into the logo of a business, you have all the information there, but in the contact, maybe you don't have the zip code.
Mhm.
So that's not affecting the functionality, because you can log in, you can see everything else, but you don't have the zip code of that particular business or whatever.
Okay, so my question to you will be, if you are not if this bug is not affecting the functionality, can you term it as a high severity bug?
Oh no,
Because
no, 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 no.
yeah, yeah. So that thing, whenever you are talking about high severity, you know, you need to think that okay, this is affecting the functionality of the system.
What if the
Then,
phone number is not present? What if the phone number is wrong?
so if the phone number is wrong, in that case also, like, it's not affecting the behavior of the application. The
Uh-huh.
the application is going to behave in the same way, right? It won't affect the behavior or the functionality of the application.
The, the customer will not be able to contact. Maybe they're trying to contact that company. They cannot contact if the phone
Yes,
number.
they cannot contact, but that is not affecting the functionality of the application that the application is intended to, right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
Because that is a visual, that is a helpline number, but you have this application for a different purpose, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk about something else which will directly affect the functionality of the application. So
Mhm.
the thing that we were talking earlier, the about section, right? So when you are clicking on the about section, you are getting some error, right? So that is
Mhm.
affecting your system, that is affecting
Yeah,
the functionality of your
yeah,
system.
yeah, yeah.
But not many users are actually, very few, one in 10,000 users is going to actually click on that about link.
Mhm.
So although this is affecting the functionality of the system, it's not a very high priority bug. I mean, the developer, it's not necessary for the developer to rush to that bug and fix it, because we know that it's not going to be used by a lot of users, and
Okay.
that's why it's not going to affect the business.
Mm.
Although it's affecting the application, although it's affecting the functionality of the application, we are not able to launch that particular page. But as very few user is going to actually use that page, it's a low priority bug. Although it's a high severity bug, but we can term it as low priority, high severity, low priority, and the developers can fix it in the future as well,
Mhm. Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
I would request you, to think about this different high severity, high priority, high severity, low priority, high priority, low severity, and all this combination, and take an example and note it and remember it. And
Mhm.
you don't need to remember it in that way. You need to remember the concept. What is severity, what is high severity, what is low severity, what
Mhm.
is high priority, what is low priority, and then the different combination, and what could
Mm.
be the practical example of this combination.
Okay.
So if you do that, if you have your concept clear, you can answer it and you can make the interviewer understand the concept, and that is what is required.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yes.
one thing that probably I will do after the next class, which is tomorrow. So we have this assignments, right? In
Mm.
your dashboard.
Yeah.
From my dashboard, I can upload some assignment, and then you can will be reflecting to your dashboard and you can complete those. So I
Mhm.
will give you some assignment based on this two classes. I will, I mean, it will be very basic. It won't take much of your time to complete that, but try to, complete that as soon as possible
Mhm.
before the before day after tomorrow's class. Okay, so
Mhm.
that you can revise, because these are the very basic concepts of testing, and this is very much required to be cleared, because if you're not clear in these concepts, it will affect you in the near future. Okay, so
Mhm.
this is very much required, and try to put some effort for this concept, so that if these are clear, it will be very easier for you to work in a live project. Because
Mhm.
whenever you will be raising a bug, you need to mention the priority and the severity there. Why?
Mhm.
Because based on the value of this priority, if it's a high priority, then the developer will rush to this defect and fix it. But if it's a low priority, then the developer will fix it in the latter stage.
Mhm.
If it's a high severity, so that means it's affecting the system, and based on that, the management or the managers can take a decision. Okay, whether we need to fix this defect in this release, or we can delay it to the next release. So this things actually denote how soon you can close your testing as well,
Mhm.
right? So that's why I mentioned that the concepts are interrelated.
Okay.
Okay, so
Mhm.
do you have any query right now from the priority and the severity part?
No, no, I'll think about it and I will learn it.
Yeah, do think about the concept, and like if you have any query, if you think that there is something which is confusing yourself, do ask me those in the next class, which is tomorrow, and
Yes.
I'll try to answer those.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, so do you need any break, or we
No,
can
no,
continue?
we can
Okay,
continue.
okay, fine. So next topic is, what is the difference between validation and verification, right?
Yeah.
So we'll look at different models of development as well, right? So in the next slide, we are going to see the software development life cycle and the software test life cycle. And then in the upcoming sessions, we'll look at different models of development. Okay, there are different type of models which are followed in the industry, and we'll talk about those. So this is used in a particular model, which will talk later in the upcoming session. But before going to that, you need to be clear about what is validation and what is verification, right? So why,
Mhm.
what is validation and what is verification, and why is it required? So validation and verification is required to confirm to the requirement, whatever the requirement is given to you. So to make sure that the requirement is correct, and you understand the requirement, the the next thing is, when the developer is developing something based on that requirement, and you are getting uh, a build for test, so now you need to validate that whatever is developed, that is uh, that is fit for the requirement, that is actually fulfilling the requirement, the the expected behavior and the actual behavior is matching, right? So now this verification and validation comes to different levels. Okay, so what is verification? So you can see here that verification is a process of evaluating the intermediary work product. What are intermediary work product? The documents which are produced during the development phase, the requirement specification, the design documents, right? So these are the things which you will get during the development of the product, during the initial phase to the development of the product, when the product is getting developed. Okay, so these are the things that we'll be getting. So verification is involved in this phase, right?
Mhm.
And what is validation? Validation is the process of evaluating the final product to check whether the software meets the business needs. In simple words, the test execution which we do in our day-to-day life are actually the validation activity, which includes smoke testing, functional testing, regression testing, system testing, etc. Don't go to this term, what is smoke testing, what is functional testing, what is regression testing, what is system testing. We'll talk about this in the later sections. But what you need to understand is, when do we perform verification, when do we perform validation? Keep it simple. When the development phase is going on, when you don't have a particular application in your hand to verify, right? When you have the design documents, the requirement specification, the documents which are produced during the development phases, so verifying that whatever is being developed is correct, that is verification. And whenever you have a software in your hand where you are making sure that whatever is expected and whatever is developed is matching, so that is validation. So
Mhm.
basically what you need to understand is, when does the verification happen? Verification happens during
In
the development
development.
phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, verification happens during the development phase. Validation happens during
At
the
the
testing
end.
phase.
Mhm.
When you have something to test, you are testing that whether this is meeting the end requirement, this is meeting the end goal, that is validation. And whenever you are verifying that whatever is being developed, that is in the right path, okay, that is
Mhm.
verification. So verification is whatever is being developed, that is correct, that is
Mhm.
verification. Validation is whatever is already developed. Validation is whatever is already developed, that is meeting the end expectations, that is validation. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't need to, jump to those jargons right now. You don't have to look at the very like the definitions, the textbook definitions. You don't, need to remember all those things. Just do the, you know keep your concept clear whenever you are listening about the term verification. So that means it's in the development phase. Whatever I am getting from the development phase, be it a requirement specification document, or it can be the design document. So whatever I'm getting from there, I will make sure that whatever they're developing it in a correct way. So that is verification, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Validation. What is validation? I have got something to test, and I am testing the application whether it's actually behaving correctly or not. That is validation. Simply that is enough. If the
Mhm.
interviewer asks you what is the difference between verification and validation, you don't need to go to those jargons and you don't need to use those textbooks definitions. No, you don't need that. What is verification? Just think about the stage when it's done. It's done in the development phase. I need to verify those documents, the requirement specification document, the other design documents, and I need to make sure that whatever they are developing, they're developing it correctly. That is verification. Done. What is validation? When I have a build to test, I need to test that application and I need to validate that whether the end result or the actual result is meeting the expected result and there is no deviation in the functionality. That is validation. done,
Mhm.
right? Anything,
Yes.
any query do you have?
No.
Okay, fine. So let's go to the next topic, which is software development lifecycle. So this is also a very important topic for interview, and they will ask you about what is the software development lifecycle and what is software test lifecycle. So this is also a very important thing, and this is also something that you need to understand it very well. You don't need to remember everything. If you understand it, you will be able to remember it by default. Okay,
Mhm.
so the software development lifecycle starts with the requirement analysis. Obviously, requirement gathering and analysis. Okay, so it's mentioned here as requirement gathering, but with that, the analysis also comes. So, what is requirement gathering? The requirement gathering is gathering of the customer requirements and documenting them. Okay, so
Mhm.
what do we do in the requirement gathering phase or the requirement analysis phase? So in the gathering phase, normally the testers or developers are not directly involved. Okay, so in that case, like the business analyst or the higher management, the architects, so they are involved there to understand what is the actual requirement of the client or the customer. Okay, so they will try to understand the requirement from the customer, and then they will document it, and they will pass it on to the developers and the tester or the team members. Now what the team members will do, they will analyze, they will do the analysis of those requirements, and they will try to understand whatever is feasible from there, what is not feasible from there. If they have any queries from those requirements, they will ask those and get those resolved. So that is done in this phase, in the requirement gathering phase or requirement gathering and analysis phase. Okay, here you can see requirement analysis. So this phase is basically requirement gathering and analysis. Okay,
Mhm.
okay. So the next phase is planning and designing. So in this planning and designing phase, who will get involved?
Developers and testers.
Right, all the team members, be it the developers or the testers, they need to get involved here. So after the analysis is done and you have a clear picture of the requirement, now what the developers will do, they will do their planning for their development, and they will start developing the design as well. So they will come up with some of the design documents, and they will start their planning and designing. At the same time, as a tester, you need to also plan and design your test plan document. You need to strategize your testing, and you need to come up with the test scenarios what you are going to have. So both the developers and testers will do their things differently in this phase. Okay, the developers will be
Mhm.
planning and designing for the development. The testing team will be planning and do the designing for their testing. Okay, once that is done, the next phase is implementation. Okay, so what do we do in the implementation phase? In the implementation phase, the development team will do their coding, they will do their implementation, and at the same time, as a testing team member, as a tester, you will prepare your test cases. Okay, you will
Mhm.
prepare your
Mhm.
test scenarios and test cases, right? So
Yes.
after that, after the implementation is done, what will happen? The development team will provide you the build for testing, and now you need to execute your test cases and validate. So don't confuse in between this verification and the verification that we were talking about in the last slide. Okay,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
verification is not the same thing.
Mm.
So whenever you are asked about the what is the difference between verification and validation, or what is V and V model, or what is verification and validation. So at that time you need to find the difference between verification and validation, the different timeline where we perform
Yeah.
that verification. If it's
Yeah.
the development phase, we do the verification of the
Yeah.
documents.
Mhm.
If it's the validation phase, we test the application and we try to find the differences between the expected and actual result. But other than that, whenever you are getting this verification, that means it's basically verifying the actual and the expected result. Okay, so in
Mhm.
this phase you'll do your testing and you will verify or validate whatever build you have got. Okay,
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
the testing, what are the other activities that will happen here? During the testing, you'll be getting the bugs, you will log the bugs, you will raise the bugs, and the developers will again fix those bugs, and then you will retest those bugs until the bug is fixed. Okay, so
Mhm.
these are the
Mhm.
different activities that happens here. And after that, when you are in a situation where you can say that I have you know come to the exit criteria, whatever was decided for you know how much testing is required, and we have come to that point of testing where we can stop our testing, and all the bugs, all the major bugs, all the high priority high severity or high priority low severity bugs are fixed, so we can go for deployment.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the code, and also like in the testing phase, once you are done from the testing from your end, it will be tested by the client as well. So the acceptance testing will be done, so different levels of testing will be done here. And once those all those testing are done, the clients are also happy with the product, they are also good with the product, then it will be deployed to production.
Yeah.
And after that, the maintenance activity will also happen, so deployment and maintenance will be there. So what will be done in the maintenance activity, like some patches needs to be given, or some bug fixes, if you are getting some production bug, so those maintenance you
Mhm.
need to give, those production bugs you need to fix and test. And then this will be uh, again. So there could be a question like, okay, now if the product is in deployed mode, if the product is like being used by the users, why the arrow is there from deployment to software development lifecycle, and why it's a cyclic, right?
Because they may have found some bugs at that stage, so it has got to be retested.
Yeah, on the top of that, there could be some, because when we have a big release, we don't do everything at once, right? Because if we try to do everything at once and then go for the release, then it will take a lot of time, right?
Mhm.
So what you do see is, whenever a new business starts their application, so what they do is they start small. They will give
Mhm.
some 5 6 features to you, and they will keep adding more and more features in the application, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So that's why, whenever you are going for feature enhancement, that's when you do need this life cycle again. So
Mhm.
that's why it's in a cyclic, motion.
Mhm.
Okay, so do you have any question from the software development life cycle?
No.
Okay, fine. So we'll look at the software test lifecycle now, which is related to software development lifecycle, because software testing is a part and parcel of the software development lifecycle, right?
Mhm.
So this is just focusing on the things that we do in the development phase, in the whole development software development lifecycle. What are the testing activities that we do? So this is a very important thing as well, and you need to remember each and every phase, because this is a very important question for interview as well. In the interview as well, they will ask you about the software test lifecycle. So you know logically think it, what is the first thing that you are going to do? You are going to analyze the requirement.
Requirements.
So this is the requirement analysis. After that, what you are going to do? So what was there in the software development lifecycle? The software gathering and analysis. After that, it was the planning
Design.
stage.
Uh-huh.
So in the planning stage, as a tester, you need to do your test planning,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
this will be test planning in the planning or designing phase, right? Planning and
Mhm.
design. So in this phase, what you will do? You will do your test planning. After that, what what was the stage? Implementation. So in the
Implementation.
implementation stage, what you will do? You will do this too. You will do your test case development and you will do your environment setup. So this environment setup, this actually depends whether you are doing it during the implementation phase or you are doing it at the beginning of verification and testing phase. Okay. If you have the dependency that you need to have the application present for the environment setup, so that time you can't do anything. You need to wait for the developers to complete the development, right? After that, you will be able to set up the environment. But if you have the luxury to do the test data setup before the application is present to you, if you have any kind of like mock application through which you can do the test data setup and the environment setup, then you can do it during the implementation phase itself. But this is something that you have to do during the implementation phase. So test case development and environment setup, this will do during the uh, implementation phase. This environment setup can be done during the initial phase of the verification and testing. Now in the verification and testing, this test execution, this is something that you will do, and after that the test cycle will be closed whenever you are reaching the exit criteria, or whenever you reached a situation where you can say that I have done enough testing and we can stop our testing now. At that time this closure will happen,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have any question from the software test life cycle? Are you able to relate it to the software development life cycle?
Yes.
Okay, okay, great. So that's all we have for today's session. And in the next session, like we'll focus more on the software development lifecycle. As I mentioned, there are different models of software development lifecycle. There is waterfall model, then there is V model, and in this V model, we'll talk about the verification and validation that we talked today. After that, there
Mhm.
is something called as iterative model and incremental model. So we'll
Mhm.
talk about these different models in the next class. But before going to the next class, I would request you to go through today's class again, so that the basics are clear to you. Because if you are not clear about the verification and validation, you won't be able to understand the V model, right?
Mhm.
You, if you are not
Mhm.
clear about the software development lifecycle and software test lifecycle, you won't be able to understand this waterfall model or iterative model or incremental model. So today's
Mhm.
class is very important from the to conceptualize the testing procedure, and the priority and severity, that is also very much important from the from the exam point of view, from the interview point of view. And while you work in a live project, while you work in a company, at that time also it is very much important uh,
Sure.
for the concepts to be clear.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll request you to go through today's class again and come up with the queries. Like I was very happy to hear that you were having the queries from the last session, and whatever queries you'll be having, just note those down and ask me those in the beginning of the next class. Okay.
Sure. Sure. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you for joining. Hope you enjoyed
Yeah.
today's class, and see you
Yes.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye. Have a good
Mm.
night, and have a good day tomorrow. Bye.
You too. Have a good day. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.